The people that make up our global community are alike in so many ways. We walk, talk, sleep, eat. We sing and dance. We laugh and cry. So many things alike or in common. But why then are many of our major challenges throughout the world still centered around our differences? Our religions, our ethnicities, our color, our origin. A small group is searching for examples near and far that give testimony and shine light on the fact that we can all live, work, play, love, and serve together. Trinidad and Tobago, 2 islands, 1 nation. A southern Caribbean paradise whose mountains and ocean shores merge together as seamlessly as the people that inhabit the islands. The island of Trinidad was a Spanish colony from the arrival of Christopher Columbus in 1498 until it was turned over to the British in 1797. The country obtained independence in 1962, becoming a republic in 1976. A mixture of unquestionable natural beauty mixed with modern industry and technology. Its diverse culture is a mixture of religions, ethnic backgrounds, and traditions created throughout its history, from the indigenous inhabitants to its population today. Searching for more about the history of Trinidad and Tobago, we visited the National Museum and Art Gallery.
The southern part of Trinidad, where we could say that there was the original entering point of the Amerindians onto the island, because it has that connection to Venezuela. Because if we understand the whole journey that the indigenous people took from the northern part of the world, coming straight through the Bering Strait and traveling through America, coming down to South America into Venezuela, and then finding their way in the Caribbean, we understand. So that transition where southern Trinidad falls into that aspect is where they came and settled and built their communities until the arrival of the Europeans, which we'll discuss later, where you see they started to migrate further into Trinidad, and that's why you'll find that strong community in Arima today, right? And not more necessarily in the southern part, but these remains or shards were found in the southern region.
Europeans began to venture west, searching for new lands and routes to the east, most notably Christopher Columbus around the year 1492.
Christopher Columbus came to Trinidad, as recorded, or discovered Trinidad, as they so rightly said, in 1492 to 1498. But we correctly will go with the date 1498. Discovered the island, embarked on the southern part of Trinidad, as mentioned before. And then what we have here is that that's connection or interaction we have with Europeans and the Amerindians. However, in this interaction, it was something that wasn't pleasant in a sense, because you have after a while the wiping out of an indigenous group, because here you have Europeans who have like probably some diseases that are not normal to the Amerindians. And then you have the whole aspect that enslavement, because when someone goes on an expedition, as Europeans do, as you want to conquer an area, and you probably have people, you see people living or occupying that area, you want to take control and see what economic resources you get out of an area, and that is what had happened here with the contact of the European. But as I would like to point out, is a key note in this fact that when Trinidad was discovered, what you had happening was the Spanish not settling into Trinidad until 1598, around there, because due to the fact that they were not quite prepared in terms of conquering these areas, so they didn't have that economic mileage or power in terms of sustaining themselves in Trinidad. So it took them quite a while to return to actually set up an establishment. And when they did return, it wasn't a matter of they themselves developing, but through methods of their own, trying to invite other settlers or planters, like for instance through the settler population introduced by then Governor Hosay to encourage French planters to come settle on the island, help develop the island as a plantation state.
The Spanish administration sought to tighten up control and put down its firm presence on Trinidad. This was a response to British and French and other Europeans trying to occupy those areas that Spain itself had not fully occupied. So at that time, effective colonization was the order of the day. The rivals said that if you had not effectively occupied a place, we will take it over. So because of strategic concerns and a reforming presence in the Spanish authorities, because the Spanish Charles III had been influenced by new economic thought that you could get more from colonies other than the extractive, which had up till then been the areas focused on by the Spanish administration. So Trinidad did not have gold and silver, but they thought they could make something of it. And then from Trinidad came the petitions of a gentleman by the name Hosay de Saint Laurent. This was a Frenchman who argued that more could be done with Trinidad, and that this could be done by the use of plantation owners and their enslaved possessions coming to Trinidad. So if you could attract these from the French islands, the idea being that we prefer to move from one Roman Catholic state to another.
Well, the year 1797, where we have the British coming to Trinidad and Tobago, right, with a smooth transition from the Spanish to the English through an article of capitulation, which did not involve any battle in terms of claiming Trinidad, but just as a handing over from the Spanish to the British. And from there, that is where we saw the full blossoming of Trinidad and Tobago in its full economic potential through sugarcane production, right? With the coming of sugarcane production and the productivity of henceforth, we saw that there was a need for labor, cheap free labor, because at this time what you want to do is manipulate economically, so the gain comes towards you. So therefore, paying for labor would be quite drastic. We already understood that the Amerindians were not quite a good source because they were wiped out due to diseases and that whole European contact and the harshness of that era. So there was the attention focused on Africa, where we show in this chronological aspect that the Africans were brought to Trinidad as early as the 15th to the 16th century to work as labor on Trinidad plantations. They came in vast numbers and thus occupied Trinidad and Tobago, where you could even understand that the population of enslaved Africans were more than the Europeans occupying here. So they were outnumbered, right? With that aspect, we have a different kind of culture.
If slavery is not, at least at first they were saying, if slavery is not ameliorated, if conditions are not improved, if we do not stop flogging the women in the field, and if we do not allow them to have market system on a Saturday, some time off from work, then the same plantation that we are holding on so tightly to will go up in flames. They are not simply saying that it's time to ameliorate. They are saying we need to get rid of this system.
After slavery ended in 1838, the ex-slaves, the freed Africans, no longer had that necessity. They were no longer forced to be on the sugar plantations. So the British had to search for alternative labor sources. They experimented with the Chinese, the Syrians, the Portuguese, but they all couldn't survive the tropical climate and the hard work that was needed on the plantations. So they had to use the Indians from India, and they first arrived in Trinidad in 1845.
At 1838, where slavery was abolished, Trinidad still being that economic drive, that need for economic boost, in that aspect being a fairly young sugar cultivated colony, there was a need for labor still. So therefore what we had coming in 1845 was a new labor force, but on that contractual agreement. These were the indentured Indians, indentured meaning contract workers. They were offered a contract simply stating, if you work in Trinidad, you work for 5 years, you will be given either land, so probably you could stay after your 5 years, or you could return trip back to India. But as manipulative as we seem to understand Europeans to be, they tend to cut corners around agreements. So therefore what we had happening, that a number of East Indians left India for new opportunities here, so they would not return back to India in that aspect. However, but the system was a bit coercive in that sense, something similar to slavery, but in this case they were probably given money in exchange for their labor.
The Indians in this colony, Trinidad, they were exploited, they were paid minimum wages, they were badly treated, they were abused, but very importantly, they were discriminated against. Not just the whites who were here, but the other ethnic groups found that the Indians spoke different languages, like Bhojpuri and Hindi. They dressed differently, they ate different foods, so their culture, their language, their religion, right? Many came as Hindus, but there were some who came as Muslims.
But what we had at this point in time here is a change, a transformation, a creolization, where we see that what was purely one form in one continent or one area, one space, becomes a new dynamic when it comes to Trinidad. So
our search continued, making the short trip to the southern part of Trinidad, to Cedros, where we witnessed some of the legacy left behind by the East Indians and others.
They are trying to make here a heritage site. They have gone to the government and they want to make here a heritage site, because what they are saying that most of their ancestors who came here and worked on the plantations in this area, these backyards represent the struggle of their ancestors, and so they are trying to make this. They want to clean it up, cut back all the trees and clean up some of the buildings and make here a heritage park, theme park, where people could come and know that it's here their ancestors used to live. Build the tajas little lower down and say their prayers little lower down here. So this is representative of the barrack yards where they used to live. They used to live along this line here. So this was the road and these were the houses. And Cedros is one of the first points where indentured laborers coming from India were dropped off. They are the ones who brought the tradition and the remembrance of Imam Hussein to this part of the world 156 years ago. Here in Trinidad, on these plains of Cedros, similar to the plains of Karbala, we have Christians, Hindus, Muslims, and ordinary people, various hues of people coming together in one accord to establish one goal, only to commemorate and remember the martyrdom of Imam Hussein. And there's tolerance every year, everywhere where this happens, in every camp across Cedros and also in St. James, where the same is being exemplified.
In Trinidad on a whole, it's a very cosmopolitan country. It's like a small United Nations. It's a part of everybody. Everybody respects everyone's religion or their cultural differences.
What really it symbolizes for all these people who participate, who bring their own interests and their own devotions to this project, if you will, called Hosay, is that in Trinidad there is a larger sort of religious philosophy that says, and you'll hear people repeat this, it's all one God anyhow, right? In any case, it's all one God, whether you have, and it's because of the multicultural nature of Trinidadian society that the idea is that there are many paths, whether they be Hindu, Christian, Muslim, Orisha, Shango, whatever, there are many paths to one God. And so I think that's the larger kind of umbrella, philosophical, if you will, umbrella that helps unite the people and allows them to, I think, bring their own interests and their own devotions, as I said, and their own passions into this particular time.
And the greater integration that the coming together of the different races at that particular event, Hosay, demonstrates that time has brought, I think, some more understanding.
In a multicultural society, I think it's a good thing to have cultural presentations by every group in the society. And it is my hope that, the support, government support will be given to all the various groups that have celebrations of any kind. Some are bigger than others, but people have celebrations in their small communities and so on, which are also as expressors of themselves, their identity and their history. And all these contribute to the national fabric of Trinidad.
In Trinidad and Tobago, we are unique. We are very multicultural. Now, something like this might not happen in the Middle East. Right? They might want to kill that person for being involved. They want to kill a Hindu or Christian for coming in this festival and touching the tajas, which you might feel is sacred. But because we are multicultural and we are open-minded and we are flexible in our thinking, we have allowed a festival like Hosay to become a unifying festival. It is symbolized as a commemoration of unity also in Trinidad. And when those drums start beating, it reminds a lot of people of the slavery days when the slaves also used drums to communicate with slaves on other plantations, right? Because the planters kept them within the plantation. So the very drums are very similar to the drums that the Africans use. That is why Africans were part of this festival in the 19th century and even today. We have Christians who are part of it because it's a time when your neighbor who is a Muslim, who during Eid would give you some wine and share his delicacies and sweets, this is why you would want to go and help him. So we are different in that we are not a religious state and we don't have these deep religious divisions like other societies or even ethnic religions. So we have somebody who is a non-Indian helping build the tajas and take part in the drumming and be part of the procession. So it's a very unique society in Trinidad and Tobago because many people come here and say, but how come during the Wali too we see non-Hindus lighting up and taking part? How come for Christmas so many Muslims and Hindus have Christmas lights and Christmas trees? So it's a society in which many people are not able to understand properly because we are so fluid.
The indentured laborers came from India and they practiced a particular system of remembering Hussein. It has continued culturally from that time until now. That people live in preparation for this time every year and will prepare themselves in advance, waiting to get to do this every year, to build it, to work assiduously, day in, day out for 10 days, fasting to achieve the goal of presenting to the community where they live this sacrifice of Imam Hussein.
Hosay, as it is termed in Trinidad, is the short abbreviation of the Muharram procession. Every year in the month of Muharram, which is the first Islamic month in lunar calendar, the Shiite Muslims of the St. James and Kokarid areas stage the Muharram procession. It has been done since 1863.
I think think that it is a pronunciation of the Anglophone Caribbean as they pronounced and raised the name Hussein. It becomes, in among English speakers in the New World, Hosay, right? But I think it is a reference to Hussein and the sort of, not the chant, but the calling out of his name.
It is a commemoration representing the death of Imam Hussein. So it's a solemn thing for us. And it's something that it's a tradition that we meet and we keep it because we believe in it. We understand what we are doing. When the time reaches for this, they come into this with their heart.
We have Hindu brothers, Hindu sisters that observe and take part in it. We have Baptists, Christians, meaning Catholics, Anglicans, everyone, that they believe in Imam Hussein as an intercessor. And they will come, they will observe the fast, the regulations as prescribed our forefathers, and they take part in the activities, main activities. So, as I explained, other regions in Trinidad, it died out because of that reason. We respect each other's belief. Other areas, they didn't have that. Other areas, they just keep it only Muslims only. And it died out. Because nowhere in the world, one family could do it on their own. You need the assistance from friends and neighbors. And that was a community effort.
We discovered that there were many reasons why the Trinidadians pulled together around the commemoration of Hosay. The spirit of community, tolerance, the appreciation of other cultures. But the most resounding one is,
I love it. You have to love this, you know.
Before coming to Trinidad and Tobago, we were aware of some of the aspects of Hosay. Witnessing it firsthand provided so much more.
We in St. James, our Hosay was brought to Trinidad from India. This is why you will see it have different customs and different traditions, different parts of the world when it comes to Muharram observances. As you may see in Trinidad, St. James here, you have 5 families that build the tazias or replicas of the tomb of Imam Hussein. So promises or vows were taken by our foreparents to build a tazia in remembrance of Imam Hussein in the month of Muharram. Well, according to each family, according to some people, everyone have a designer. Each family, it have 5 families that build the tazias. So somebody know how to build it. Like my dad is the designer. We draw it out and he will build it just as he draw it out. It's like a building. You know what scale going with work.
I started in the Hosay in 1968. Started to build my first Hosay, where I learned from my uncles and older heads that I met there. It was a nice experience for me. Learning, didn't know anything about Islam until I convert into Islam. And but I keep up the faith, and Hosay for me is something great that I've been doing for all of these years. I take it very seriously. Well, I started off with a big crew, maybe about 15 or 20 of us building it. It's been back down to a few now, but they're dedicated workers. Once we start, everybody clean. I prepare everything, and then we start. A lot of people gone away who's married and who is working. The time is very limited to them now, so everything falls on me now. I do the actual work. The whole building, complete building, I do it by myself. Later on, I'll get a little assistance now to help but decorate and whatnot.
The law requires you have a clearance in the street where the lines pass like 13, 14 feet. This is why ours, we designed the top to drop inside. The top part of the detachment is called the gumage.
When the Hosay reached on the street, they were so tall in those days that we used to have a utility company accompany the Hosay to raise the wires, right? And that kind of died off. They stopped coming, and then there was a time when I saw a guy took a rod to raise the wire, a high tension wire, and it started to spark off. You understand? So from that, I something that run through my mind. I say, you know something, I have to do something about that. I don't like that, to get electrocuted with that. So then I decided, and I worked my brain around and come up with this idea to have a top that's dropped inside, 13 meters high, is the normal size. I can pass any wire, that's the lowest wire. So that's how I came about that we could get something to up and down or mechanical, something to raise and drop and cross the wires. It's a very simple thing, but good piece of innovation.
The smaller ones are called gumjis, which are the small little ones. Then you have minars, which are columns that rise up. You also have the arches, which are the detail work, the center of them. And all that just have the same thing. It's the same parts, right? The cantilever is the edge, where you will see the little things hanging called pans and glitter. Everything is man-made. Where we purchase the material, of course, and we will cut the foil for whatever shape we need or use the fabric. It is made out of white pine. Years ago was used bamboo.
But now as the years go by, innovation step in, and then environmentalists came in, and you have to get a permit to cut the rose, you have to get a permit to cut the bamboo, and there's a shortage of this, so that kind of cut off, and we started to use other type of material like wood, started to use wood, cardboard now.
And after the cardboard, it is covered with white paper. It makes flour paste, flour and water. Basic things, put it on the paper, and you put it on the cardboard to get a body, and then you dress. Meaning when you cut your fabric, whatever color you put in it in, and you apply it with your glues, whatever adhesive material you want to use, and it is done. Then braiding is done afterwards, more detailed work. The arches, those are made out of paper or styrofoam. Cut out the patterns, and the last thing, you use your glitter dust, as you can see on it, and it's very intricate work. Not all yards do this. So every yard have a different style, a different designer. I guess it's according to the ability. According to the ability of the designer and the workmanship, craftsmanship. So this is why each yard, some might start beforehand, before time, due to the fact they might not have the manpower needed. Because some yards have more manpower than some.
We can't build everything in one, because you'll have to have scaffolding inside the tent. You have to have a taller tent, 15 feet, because this is around 15 feet high. So that's why we have to build it in parts and then assemble it after.
Years ago, you could have built a Taj in 30 days, because you had real manpower. Real manpower. But as I tell you, in time, things change. People working now, it's hard to get time off as before. Right? The economy, people don't want to lose their jobs. People coming out to help us. We are family members, we coming out. Right? We are fortunate, by my dad here, the business he had. Everybody on board. Allah is so granted that everybody gets time off, everybody comes and they really take part in it. And the katia is the thing what it is built on, that is the stand. It has wheels on it. But years ago it was carried on the shoulder, like the nakal in India. It was carried on the faithful on the shoulder, and they will walk with that. Right? And my grandfather, Ali Hussein Imam Ali, it's like 1915, they used to walk with it on the shoulders. But in due time, in due course, things changed. The taxes became larger, heavier. You realize they put it on the wheels and they pull it.
Ever since we started off at the first yard I started to build in Clarence Street, we had a mixture of people, all different races comes in, different religion, but they carry on the tradition. They was taught how to go about it. There's a non-Muslim, but this is what we have to do. If you want to partake in it, this is what you have to do, this is what you cannot do, and they follow through.
The building is open to anyone who participates as long as you know, they observe the ritual restrictions. But, there has to be, for example, an imam who presides and does niyaj over at certain moments, and that's not going to be anybody. That's going to be a Muslim imam, right? And so there are certain roles and certain capacities that are drawn particularly from Islam, but in terms of the sort of significance of this as a community expression of devotion, that is multi-religious.
As you know, years ago they had sugar plantations in Trinidad. So you realize some plantations were smaller in number, so they produced smaller tazias. The bigger plantations used to produce the larger tazias. Also, it have some families that came into the Hosay. Some produced large tazias due to it's a financial cost comes with it, right? And it is the sole responsibility of the families who are building it to provide materials, labor, buy everything. So this is why some of the tazias were very small, some were big, some were medium sized, but they had many families used to take part in it years ago. Other than St. James, you had places like El Sicuro, Hoover, Chagonas, wherever there was a sugar plantation where the East Indians came, they had Muharram. As well, it's a community-based presentation from ever since the plantation where the Hindu brothers used to take part.
Remember, any kind of religious tradition takes on something of the environment of the local milieu. Even if it's simply about debating what is proper and improper, that's still a reflection of the local setting. And so it must take on a kind of Trinidadian way of looking at the world, a Weltanschauung, if you will.
Most of the people may not be Muslim by faith, but they follow the setting laid down by the Muslim people. It's a wonderful thing because it makes you get together and cooperate. You may not be a Muslim, but you have Muslim policies behind the back.
The first of Muharram, that is the first night in the yard where prayers are being started. Salams are paid to Imam Hussein and the 72 martyrs of Karbala. It is done in each Hosay and Munyard by the chowk. The chowk is a white square, which really means sanctified area or sacred space to observe prayers on. We go there, we stand before it, we pray to Almighty Allah to grant we send salutations to Imam Hussein and his followers. As well, on the 8th night of Muharram, that's flag night. That's the night when the flags come out, the alarms, which represents Hazrat Abbas, who was martyred in Karbala, Imam Hussein's half-brother. He was martyred at the age of 34 years old. This is why that night is put aside for him. People from all walks of life, different religions, different ethnic backgrounds, they come and they put flags in remembrance of Hazrat Abbas. Every flag that you see represents someone making a promise, meaning they made some personal promise that they want Abbas to intercede for them. So they put a flag in remembrance of him. Flag night, the 8th night of Muharram. The 9th night of Muharram is small Husainite, or little Husainite, it is known in Trinidad. That is for Ali Asgar, which is the 6-month-old son of Imam Hussein. He was martyred in the battle. That night is put aside for him. This is why the 7 families will build small tazias in remembrance of Ali Asghar. Normally it was carried on the faithful on their head. Like I did it for many years. This year I didn't do it. And they will walk with it on the prescribed route as set out. Yes, well, the water and the milk. The milk represents the milk what Ali Asghar was unable to get from his mother because they had no water. And the water is placed as a reminder of the thirst that the holy martyrs went through before getting martyred in the fans of Karbala. The scorching heat and the songs of Al-Atash, Al-Atash by Bibi Sakina. So this is why that is as a reminder for us. And then on the 10th night of Muharram, that's when the large tazia comes out. That is in remembrance of Imam Hussein and all the martyrs. That is done by the 5 families, because out of the 7 families. Flag night and small Hussein night, all of them brings out flags and the little Hussein. However, on the big Hussein night, which is called Ashura night, the 2 moons come out. You have 2 families responsible for the moons. You have the red moon and the green moon. The red one represents Imam Hussein. It's smaller in size, it's red in color because Imam Hussein was beheaded due to the blood. Imam Hassan, which is the elder brother, the green moon or the blue moon represents Imam Hassan. He was poisoned by his wife. This is why the moon is green, poison, and blue, signifying the color when someone turns when they are poisoned. These 2 are also in the procession. No other part of the world has the moons, which are 2 half-shaped crescents, and is turned on the shoulders of the faithful. And you have the 5 other families that build the tazias. You have the Panchaiti Hussein, which is the oldest. You have Kukarit, then you have Ghulam Hussein, then you have Balma, then you have the Bis Hussein. That's the order of seniority. And all of them comes out and they go up to the Western Main Road and back. Ashura Day, which is the day procession after the night, they comes out and they go on the Western Main Road. However, they accompany the moons to the QRC grounds, which was a sugarcane estate years ago, because the college was built in 1902, and they go in there since 1863. So they go there to do their prayers. So we escort them through the back through Sinclair Estate, which was known at the time. They go up Serpentine Road, down Mary Street, which is a very upscale community, and to QRC grounds. The route that we go on as well is a specific route, which was always done by our forefathers. So since 1863, it's the same route that we use. Now, the yards, some of them change addresses. Some build in one area, some move to the next yard. But it's the same, you move from your respective yards to the Western Main Road. You know the areas where you turn. And the day procession as well, we go to the college ground in QRC, which our royal charter was signed in 1863 by Queen Victoria. granting the coolies of the St. James area. That is what they called the Indians at the time, the British coolies, that parcel of land to observe their prayers and rituals. So on every Ashura day at 3:30 p.m. in the evening, you will see that prayers, salams are being paid to Imam Hassan and Imam Hussein at that point in time. Because the belief here is that is the hour when our holy Imam was martyred in Karbala. The local time here, this is why the prayer is done at that specific time. And it goes back to that specific area where some of the holy earth of Karbala was placed by our forefathers.
What happened now these days now is that the building of the Taja, we don't have the followers like somebody learning the trade or involved in it who love this thing. So we're losing that. Nobody is there to follow, and if I pass away and somebody to take it up, it's very hard to get somebody to carry it on. Right? We don't have that again. If we have more drummers, youths like to beat too much a drum, they're just drumming. We don't have nobody to carry on this, and this is something for me, this is my life. Building this, I love that. I spend all my time here, all my time in this yard doing this. I am a retiree now. All my money, what I got is going to that. Right? This is how I live. I love it. I just love it. It's for a purpose for Imam Hussein. Right? That is how I look at it. I am very strict. I don't play with this thing. I love it. You have to love this. If you don't have love for this, you can't make it. That is me. But I hope it don't die away. That is all. I hope it don't die out. And I hope somebody can pick it up and follow in my footsteps. It's not happening here alone. All the different yards, that is what's happening. You don't have people again.